Beware Robin Hood. It was a frigid winter in Nottingham. Snow blanketed the ground, and the leafless trees stood like skeletons against the pale gray sky. Inside the castle, the air was tense as Prince John, the Sheriff of Nottingham, and Sir Hist gathered to hash yet another plan to capture the daring Robin Hood and his merry men. "This season gives us an advantage," boomed the sheriff, slamming his fist on the table. "Without leaves, the trees offer no cover. We'll see those outlaws coming from a mile away." Prince John lounged on his throne, absently sucking his thumb, his face twisted into a scowl. "Bah! If it's easier for us to see them, it'll be easier for them to see us. Use your head, you buffoon." The sheriff looked taken aback, but didn't argue. Sir Hist slithered closer, his forked tongue flicking in the cold air. "If I may, your majesty," he began in a low voice, "I have a most ingenious solution. We will disguise ourselves as trees. The merry men won't suspect a thing until it's too late." The sheriff raised an eyebrow. "Trees? And how do you plan to make that work?" "Leave that to me," Sir Hist said with a sly grin. "We'll blend into the forest perfectly, and Robin Hood will walk right into our trap." Prince John leaned forward, intrigued despite himself. Very well, Hist. But if this fails, it's your head." Unbeknownst to them, Maid Marian had overheard every word. She had been tidying the room when their conversation began and quickly ducked behind a heavy velvet curtain. Her heart pounded as she realized the danger Robin Hood was in. Once the scheming trio had left the room, she slipped out and made her way to Sherwood Forest as quickly as she could. In the depths of Sherwood Forest, Robin Hood was sitting by a crackling fire, repairing his bow, when Maid Marian arrived. Her cheeks were flushed from the cold, and her breath came in short gasps as she explained what she had heard. "Robin, they're coming for you," she exclaimed. "Prince John, the sheriff, and Sir Hist, they plan to disguise themselves as trees to trick you." Robin listened with a twinkle in his eye. When she had finished, he grinned and said, "Disguised as trees, you say? Oh, this is going to be fun." He called his merry men together and relayed the news. "Lads, we've got some strange trees growing in Sherwood this winter. Let's head out and chop some firewood," he said with a wink, handing each man an axe. The merry men cheered, eager for the challenge. They bundled up against the cold and set off, their boots crunching through the snow. The forest was silent except for the sound of their laughter and the occasional snap of a twig underfoot. As they ventured deeper into the forest, Little John stopped and pointed. "Now that's odd," he said, scratching his head. "Those trees over there, look at them. They're thicker than any tree I've ever seen, and they've only got 2 branches each." Robin chuckled quietly. "You're right, Little John, those are very peculiar trees indeed. Let's chop them down for our fires, shall we?" The merry men approached the strange trees, axes in hand. But before they could swing, one of the trees let out a high-pitched shriek. No, don't chop me down. The merry men froze in surprise. Another tree bellowed, "Attack the outlaws! Take them down!" But as the disguised men tried to advance, their bulky costumes made it impossible to move quickly. One stumbled into another, and soon the forest was filled with the sounds of shouting and clumsy crafts. These costumes are useless, wailed a soldier from inside his tree trunk disguise. "We can't see a thing. Why didn't we cut peepholes?" Robin Hood and his merry men burst out laughing. "You've got to be kidding me," said Friar Tuck, wiping tears from his eyes. "They're trees, all right, bumbling trees." The disguised soldiers panicked. "Retreat!" One shouted, and they stumbled and flailed their way back through the forest, tripping over roots and colliding with real trees. Prince John, his costume tangled in a low branch, screamed, "You fools, get me out of here." He finally managed to free himself and waddled after his retreating men, his crown askew and his dignity in tatters. Back at Nottingham Castle, the servants worked to remove Prince John's cumbersome disguise. His face was as red as a winter berry, and his golden crown kept slipping down over his eyes. "That was the most ridiculous idea I've ever heard," he screeched, glaring at Sir Hiss. "We could have been chopped to bits by those ruffians." Sir Hiss tried to slither away unnoticed, but Prince John pointed an accusing finger at him. "This was your plan, Hiss. Get out of my sight before I decide to use you for firewood." "Yes, Your Majesty. Right away, Your Majesty," Sir Hiss stammered as he slithered hastily from the room. Meanwhile, back in Sherwood Forest, the merry men were gathered around their campfire, their spirits high. Robin raised a mug of warm cider and said, "Here's to the finest group of lumberjacks in Nottingham, and to the most foolish villains we've ever faced." The merry men laughed and cheered, their voices echoing through the forest. Despite the winter chill, their hearts were warm with triumph and camaraderie. Robin Hood smiled, knowing that, as long as they stood together, no plot from Prince John would ever bring them down.